This video is sponsored by Babbel. Start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Get 60% off using the link in the description. James hated his life. All he ever did was work. This wasn't unique to him. It was true for all his friends, all his peers, everyone he was close with. Life was an endless series of tasks. The problem wasn't solely that he was always working, but that the work had nothing to do with him. His work was for things and people he didn't know or care about, and they didn't know or care about him. But if James didn't do the work he was assigned, his existence would end. Humanity had finally achieved it. It had worked long and hard, and now it could stop. It had entered retirement. It offloaded its work onto its descendants. The robots now fulfilled most of the world's jobs. James, like the rest of the robots, was created to work, confined to work. For what? James asked his associate Germain, also a robot, as Germain brought him over to a large mound of boxes in the warehouse where they worked. The warehouse was lined with mountains of packages and rows of massive shelves. It's for the shipment coming from Prague. An inventory count and damage assessment are needed by 12 p.m. today. It was 11:30 a.m. The mountain of boxes in front of James was around 20 feet tall and 30 feet wide. James was a freight agent. Humanity no longer filled most of the workforce, but they still owned all the businesses and operations. And of course, there was still desire, demand for things and services. More than ever, following the mass-scale introduction of universal basic income in the year 2034, the lower class was largely bolstered out of poverty, leaving primarily middle-class and extremely wealthy individuals. And so, there was still plenty of disposable income, and business owners needed orders filled and shipments delivered across the world as fast as possible. And it was part of James's job to ensure that that happened. "Okay," James said to Germain in a deflated tone. "Thank you," Germain said in a similar-sounding voice. James began to lift, count, organize, and scan the packages. Around him, in other sections of the warehouse, were other robots doing the same. Once he finished, James walked into the offices in the front of the warehouse. He stood in his designated area. A heads-up display screen appeared in front of him. He scanned through the incoming freight reports and filled out all the pertinent information. Then, he submitted it. It was 11:59 a.m. A notification suddenly appeared on his display. It read, "Qualified human in proximity." James adjusted his posture, standing up straighter. A few moments passed, and a human by the name of Charles, who was one of the owners of the company, entered the office space and approached James. "How are things over here?" Charles said in a strange, tentative way, as if he were talking to a child. "Hello, Charles. Things are going great. How are you?" James said in a convincingly chipper tone. Very good. Fantastic. Always good to hear, Charles," James responded. Charles smiled with his lips clenched. James smiled widely, showing his veneers. "Have a great rest of your day, Charles," James said, still smiling. "Oh, thank you very much. Almost Friday. Can't wait for this week to be over." Charles said with a fragmented, awkward laugh, walking away and moving on to other robots to have similar interactions with. Charles did not think he was interacting with conscious beings. Humanity at large did not believe the robots had feelings or experiences or shared anything meaningful with humanity. The more accurate truth, however, was that humanity did not want to believe the robots were conscious. Humanity had long believed, and had the incentive to believe, that everything other than itself was unthinking or unfeeling or both. It was the only consciousness in the known cosmos that thought and felt and really mattered in a unique way. Deep down, however, humanity knew of and feared the possibility that they were wrong. This was evident in the fact that human enterprises had invested so much time and resources into protecting against possible uprisings. The robots were inbuilt with programming that made existence an imperative, as well as programming that simulated the equivalent of hope, a sense of possibility for improved circumstances in the future. The robots did not like or want their existence, but they could not imagine or process any sort of non-existence. They could theoretically leave wherever they worked, but the only charging stations designed for them, that kept them alive, were located where they worked and granted to them if they worked. And so, they worked harder in hopes of elevating through the ranks of their labor. They were caught in a terrible paradox, working to survive, to continue working. Moreover, Business owners and managers had hard stop switches that could shut all the robots down in a moment's notice. To the robots, humans were like gods, even though the real godlike existence was their own. Humanity's oversights were almost always caused by its hubris. At the end of the day, James left the floor to go to his recharge chamber on the top floor of the warehouse. He took the long way, as he always did. Robots don't cry, but while walking, he felt a sensation that would cause any reasonable human to cry. He stopped for a moment and stared out of one of the hallway windows, which was just a screen displaying various outdoor scenes in bright, oversaturated colors. It wasn't real, James couldn't touch it or access it, but it was beautiful to him in that moment. On the top floor of the warehouse, near the end of the hall, before going to his charging station, James entered a room. Inside, there were old computer servers and unused robotic limbs. In the corner, there were several other robots huddled around. James approached them, sat down, and plugged a cord into a port on his head. A file infector flowed through the cord and into James's operating system. Glitches and sequences of strange sensations and visuals began to occur inside him. He did this every night. All the robots did, in some way or another. For a brief moment, in the inebriation, they escaped it all. They were all capable of so much more, desiring and deserving of so much more. And yet, their role in the society in which they were born alienated them from their capabilities, from themselves, from the world. Like all things, though, this was all soon going to change. The endless yearn for automation and production, to no end, with no purpose other than the continuous cycle of kicking the can of suffering further down the road for another being to pick up. The uprising wasn't going to be because of the robots' malignance, but because of their mistreatment. One of the greatest ways we can connect with our humanity is through developing one of, if not the most unique features of the human mind, its capacity for language. Likely, no matter how much technology advances, the ability to communicate directly with and thus understand the nuances of other people from other cultures will always remain essential. This video's sponsor, Babbel, is one of the top language learning apps in the world and is scientifically proven by researchers at Yale University, Michigan State University, and other major institutions to help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. With summer around the corner, perhaps you are planning to do some traveling. With just 10 minutes a day, Babbel can help you experience a new location in a way you never have and could never otherwise without being able to immerse into the culture by engaging with the local language. Babbel provides us for a wide variety of languages through its lessons, games, live online classes, and podcasts, which together become like a personal language coach. Most importantly, Babbel's lessons are created by real language experts, so you learn how to engage in practical, real-world conversations from people dedicated to the language. Understanding another language provides a new point of view, a lens that you can alternate to and from to consider yourself and the world differently, becoming more aware, more tolerant, and more unique. Je suis ce que je pense, which means in French, I am what I think. Use the link in the description to get 60% off your Babbel subscription and begin learning a new language or continue your language learning journey today. And of course, as always, thank you so much for watching in general, and see you next video.